Hey there, MVP Days fans. I am super stoked for this session today. Today, we've got a fellow Reconnect MVP on with me, John O'Neill Sr. I'm Dave Kawula. I'm an author, blogger at checkyourlogs.net, author of many books on LeanPub and Amazon. John is actually a co-author with me. John, you want to do a quick introduction?
Hey everyone, thanks a lot for having me here today. I, just like Dave, am super stoked about this session. It's got some awesome real world content. I, like Dave mentioned, am an author, blogger, speaker. I'm a previous MVP and currently in the Reconnect MVP program. And that's enough about me. Let's get back into this.
Yeah, so first of all, John, let's set the stage for this particular session that we're going to be delivering for MVP Days. With the landscape of cybersecurity as it is today, ransomware is probably one of the most scary situations for any business owner today, any enterprise, anything. I have to give you a little statistic. Out of my customer base, John, believe it or not, 70% of my customers got hit with some type of a ransomware attack in one way, shape, or form. Now, some prevented it, some didn't. And from what I found is these things will come in a few different forms. And the few different forms that they're going to come is an admin level attack where somebody has domain admin level rights, and the other one is a user-based attack. And so I have to reach out to you, John, and just ask you, in the industry that you're working in right now, is this a concern? Because I understand you work in manufacturing and like plant type operations where you got PLCs and things like that for your day job. And is ransomware a big concern for you guys?
It is an epic level concern right now because it can affect the operation from top to bottom, right? When you have a manufacturing operation and you've got thousands of employees out there, and you have, for instance, a system that encrypts and locks down the data that's driving your machinery and such, all those workers become idle. So now, not only are you not making a part that you can sell and generate revenue from, but you're burning wages that you need to pay these people, right? And they're not producing any output. So this is a big level concern from the CIO, CTO level that I often work in, is preventing this and realizing that when it inevitably happens, how do we lock it down, right? How do we keep the mouse in the smallest area possible so that all of our operations aren't disrupted?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? I think that this is very, very high. If you had to go poll CIOs, CTOs, CSOs, ransomware, cybersecurity is right at the top of their list. And anything that we can do to prevent this and or recover from it is going to be very important. So, seeing as this is an Azure Day session, we figured that we would put a Microsoft Azure site recovery spin on this. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually perform what I call a double swing recovery, where we're going to take a machine, we're going to impact it in some way, ransomware. I can't give away my entire demo for you, but we're going to do some very bad things to it. And it's not going to be in a very recoverable state. And what we're going to do is do something called a double swing recovery to bring that back using Azure Site Recovery. I do have to set the stage here a little bit. It's a short session. In a couple slides, we're going to show you how you can completely follow along with everything that we're doing, because there's going to be a big discussion around this. Now,
And Dave, let me jump in here, just because you said some pretty extreme stuff, and I just want to remind everyone. Well, thank you for jumping into that slide. No one should be doing any of this in a live production environment or anything that even touches a live production environment. This should only be done in your lab, up in Azure Labs, whatever. But do not do this on any computer that's going to touch your primary or live network.
and I think you're going to have to put some additional reminders in there as we go through, because you can do some pretty horrific things to your network if you actually follow these step-by-step instructions. So like I said, I'm just showcasing this to show you what could happen, the theoretical possibilities. And I do expose some code. I have it on my GitHub repo. But like I said, the big disclaimers here for the session that, use this for good, not for evil, only for testing. Okay. All right. Next thing is we've actually started to do something. Many of you know that I'm one of the co-founders of MVPDays and MVPDays Publishing. And one of the things that we've started to do is write books that go along with the sessions that we deliver. So good news for all of you attending today and anybody that's out on the internet watching the session later. If you head over to www.leanpub.com, you can actually get a free copy of our book on surviving ransomware attack with Azure Site Recovery. It actually documents out step by step all of the demonstrations that I'm going to show you. And let me just actually take you over to the LeanPub site here. The nice thing in here is you can actually get this book for free, John, by just taking the slider bar, taking it all the way over to the left, making it free. This is actually our latest book that we've put out. The one thing I do have to point out is that if you choose to pay anything for the book, let's say you choose to pay whatever, $25, and we get $19 as authors, we put that into a scholarship fund, and I'm really pleased to announce for the first time at an MVP Days event that our very first scholarship was granted to a young gentleman from Vancouver. He's a high school student, top 5 biology student in the country of Canada. For privacy reasons, obviously not going to mention names here, but we're happy to say that through MVP Days Publishing, we were able to grant a $10,000 4-year scholarship to him. So he's getting $2,500 a year to put towards his schooling, and hopefully he'll take that and move into some type of a technology field. So just know that if you do put money in here, it's a donation bucket, even although it doesn't say anything on there. We used to say it was just beer money for the authors, but all of us authors said, listen, just take it and we'll go do something good with it. So I just wanted to mention that to everybody. If you do want to grab it for free, no problem at all. Just hit $0, add to cart. It'll give you a downloadable, searchable PDF. The book's about 170-ish pages, so it's pretty good. A lot of content in there. And so let's get going. So
that is just so amazing, Dave, and it's just a wonderful thing to be part of, that you give back to not only the IT community, but then to the next generation, right? We're not going to be leading this charge forever, and it's nice to know that we can do something to help the next generation pick up the staff and even do amazing things that we can sit back and be in awe of.
Absolutely. And I look at it as if we can help one person with something that we write, mission accomplished. So take the book. Hopefully you learned something. It's your gift for attending the session here today. Let's jump back into the slide deck real quick because, if you saw this on your screen right now, John, you'd be having a very, very bad day. Now, let's talk about 2 different types of attacks that could happen in this type of crypto locker incident. And crypto locker was actually probably one of the most popular ones that was rampant around Calgary, Alberta, where I live. And two types of attacks we saw. First type of attack was a user-based attack or a shared workstation. Eek! I know you're saying shared workstation, shared account, bad idea. Absolutely bad idea. But at the end of the day, that particular artifact on the network got compromised. What is this going to go attack? Anything that it's got mapped drives to. So it's going to go try to get your Word documents, your PowerPoint documents, your AutoCAD files. It's going to encrypt them. You're not going to be able to use them. It'll typically drop a placeholder in each of the shares saying, hey, yo, I've been encrypted. You can click on the README. It'll have instructions for paying the ransom. And you have a choice, pay it or basically restore your file system and wipe that particular machine. Hopefully that user's computer was just using a low privileged account and not local administrator, and you'd just be able to do a recovery. If he did have local administrator rights, there's a possibility you might have to wipe that workstation as well. So you're talking a file server restore. So what do most of my clients do? They used good backup technologies, and they basically restored whatever those shares were on the file server. Maybe lost a day's worth of work, but at least it wasn't an end of days type attack. Okay. Second type of attack is very scary, John. And this type of attack is with domain admin, your godlike credentials that you have on the network. And you're thinking to yourself, yeah, but it couldn't happen to me. Well, couldn't it? one of the attacks that we saw came from a very interesting source where the customer was actually using a cloud-based backup provider from an organization, very reputable. Even had some healthcare clients in there, and for whatever reason, their domain admin credentials got cracked in the cloud, and the hackers actually had a chance to go into the backup files and grab the Active Directory database and had infinite amount of time to actually crack the customer's Active Directory ntds.dit database files. Ouch. So they waited till their most busy time of the year and executed a whole level ransomware attack, infecting every workstation, every SharePoint, Exchange, everything. And basically, they didn't have any backups that were solid at that point in time. So they had to start over from scratch. Could you imagine taking the organization that you currently work with, John, and starting over from scratch? Like DC promoing your first box and creating the first user account, having no data? Where do you start? How much is one of those AutoCAD drawings worth? What's that engineering process worth?
Oh, I just got to jump in because that is just too, I mean, that gives me the willies just to think about. There's a lot of businesses that I don't believe would survive that. They couldn't absorb the financial losses to take the time to rebuild from day zero, right? They just wouldn't make it back. It would put them out of business.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So let's jump right into it. We're going to take a look at the bad guy type attack here, okay, John? And so we're going to take a look at an attack on a domain controller. And what we're going to do is we're going to try two things on this domain controller, all right? This domain controller is currently, and I just want to set the stage for this, is currently protected by Azure Site Recovery. And how did we set this up, John? We used the all new Microsoft Windows Admin Center. The disaster recovery stats aren't showing in my lab here, but it is protected. So basically, I configured integration with Azure in Windows Admin Center, and so it's all documented in the book. I just want to point that out. But we are protected, okay? And so one of the important pieces to note here is that we're going to attack this machine called DC01. We're going to say, listen, I've got domain admin level credentials and I want to do some very bad things. I don't want to just get a ransom. And the other really interesting part of this, John, is that I'm actually going to get around Windows Defender security because I'm going to execute some raw PowerShell as administrator, which is also very scary. So to set the stage here, I just have to go grab some starter files here. So let's just hop over to GitHub.
While you're doing that, I just want to take a moment and remind everybody, with all that scary stuff that we just kind of set the stage for, don't do this in a production environment. This is lab only stuff. I can't say it enough.
So like a good administrator, I publish all my GitHub repos. So we can see here, go to my GitHub repo on surviving a ransomware attack. I've got a Chapter 7 ransomware testing. So I'll just go ahead and we'll grab this script. It's about 80 lines of code that I use to do some very not nice things inside of your domain controller. Just trust me that this is actually protected by Azure Site Recovery. Should I just show them real quick here first? Yeah, let's go into Azure Site Recovery here first. I'm just in the Azure portal here. We can take and we can go into my Site Recovery Vault that I've got for this machine that's been set up. So we'll go in here. All of this was configured through Windows Admin Center. Very, very easy to set up. Probably takes less than an hour to actually get started with this. I'll come down to replicated items. You'll see a few errors in here, but that's okay. And the reason for this is I only turn my lab on when I do sessions like this. I don't leave it on all the time, so that's why my replication health is kind of critical. But I just want to show you under the overview that we do have a few machines in here. So I've got 5 critical. I've got some failover tests that were performed, and things look like they're going to work for us. So if I go to my replicated items, I'm just telling you not to worry about the fact that that's actually sitting in there is not replicated. If I go to this DC01 machine, John, I can actually go check some recovery points in here. You can see the latest recovery points. And I can see that I actually have some recovery points in here from today. They go back a little further than this as well, but I potentially have the ability to survive this. The second thing that I really want to point out is that when you deal with the ransomware level DR event, it is totally different than a traditional DR event. Okay, so John, what would some traditional DR events be in your opinion? Would it be like a fire, flood, anything else you can think of?
Yeah, so of course you have the physical events, right? Tornadoes, fires, floods, any form of disaster that way. But then you also have the much more common user-initiated DR, meaning, oh, oops, I deleted an entire folder and I meant to actually just delete a file, or I renamed it, or I selected everything in the file, deleted it, and then saved it, right? All those sorts of things. Where you have to restore the data, because the data, maybe it's payroll data, maybe it's engineering files that are used to produce customer parts or revisions. It could be anything, and you often have all those user initiated disasters. So it doesn't just take an act of nature to cause a disaster. In fact, the ones we deal with more often than not are created by people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just hold on a sec here. Okay, so John, one of the things I wanted to show you was when you deal with a traditional failover type event, it's what we call a planned failover, and there's some mechanics behind here that are so important, and you just need to understand these if you ever get into a ransomware situation. In a planned failover scenario like this, what's going to end up happening is we're going to have two parts. We're going to have a source virtual machine. So this is going to be a source virtual machine over here. And then we're going to have a target virtual machine over here. And from Azure's perspective, this actually lives inside of the site recovery vault, okay? And so when we go to do a planned failover, what happens is there's a final synchronization that happens between these machines. And basically, if this machine was compromised, you would send this over into your replicated vault. And so that would be a very bad thing to have happen. So when you have a ransomware situation, never, ever, ever use planned failover, okay? Let's just pretend that planned failover doesn't even exist anymore. Do I make my point?
Perfectly.
Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to use a feature called failover. And what this is going to do is this is going to take the virtual machine. So we had a virtual machine that was basically in the context of the vault here. And what's going to happen is we're going to say failover now. We're going to pick one of the recovery points here, something that was not compromised. This is going to go take and spin up a virtual machine in your Azure IaaS service. So we'll actually see a virtual machine showing up in here. We're going to make sure that that's okay. Then what we're going to do, and it's kind of weird because now that's actually a good virtual machine, we're going to use the planned failover button at that point in time to take this virtual machine that's running in Azure and go stand it back up on-prem. Okay, so we're going to re-replicate it down because we do want to make a final sync at this point in time because it's safe. And this is what I call the double swing migration method or double swing recovery. And that's what we can use. So this virtual machine that's going to live in Azure is only going to live there for a temporary point in time. So you're not going to be paying a lot of dollars to run that because we just want to make sure that it works. Then we'll swing it back with a planned failover execution. It's a double swing migration. All right. Now I just understand that we're probably going to end up going a little over our 20 to 30 minutes here, but this content's just too important not to do it justice. So I'm not going to rush. We're going to do it properly. Okay. Sound good?
Perfect.
So failover is for the ransomware incident, or if this on-prem site doesn't exist anymore, we can't do that sync. Planned failover is a sync. So this is sync. This is no sync. Take from the vault. Take from a copy. Okay?
Got it.
So we have recovery points. So the good news is that we can actually recover to something. So now, without further ado, let's go do some very bad things in the lab. Don't worry about this screen right now. We'll get to that one. That's one of the other VMs that we're going to be working with. First thing I want to do is the first attack that we're going to execute here is actually going to be on the Sysvol. So John, what type of information gets stored in the Sysvol from an Active Directory perspective?
So of course that's where you have all of your group policies and pretty much all the things you rely on to make Active Directory share identity information throughout a network is going to live in Sysvol because it's got a transfer between domain controller and domain controller.
That's absolutely correct. So let's just go take a look at our Sysvol in here. This is a very vanilla build of Active Directory. I've only got the two starter policies, default domain policy and default domain controller policy, okay? And so if I go into one of these policies, there's a group policy template file. That looks pretty normal, right? That looks like it's plain text. Everything looks good, all right? So I'm going to take the approach that I'm a not nice bad guy and I don't want any money for this. I just want to shut you down. So let's say, John, for example, you have a whole bunch of low privileged kiosk workstations that are living on your network. How did you probably lock those things down? Did you probably lock them down with group policy?
Of course. That's what.
So what do you think happens, John, if I make it so that group policy can't work anymore? Huh. Interesting. All right.
Yeah, you're going to keep me up at night for many nights in a row thinking about these things.
All right. So let's go ahead and try this out. If you notice the domain name I've got, it's actually MMS MOA. I was just at the Microsoft Management Summit at Mall of America, and I actually built this lab for that particular demo. So let's get started. So I've actually made this very easy. Once again, the disclaimer, do not do this in production. So just to make things easy on you, John, I made a little pop-up window. Do you remember where the Sysvol location is actually stored? It's in like Windows, like Sysvol.
System 32 or Sysvol.
I think it's just Sysvol, right? There it is.
Oh, yeah,
so there's
right
our
there.
Sysvol. If we come into our domain, we can see our policies in here, right? If we come down to the other Sysvol folder, we'll see the MMS MOA root level folder. So let's just go ahead and choose that. That sounds like a lot of fun. Then let's just go ahead. You know, I had to learn PowerShell from scratch, John. It really didn't come naturally to me. So whenever I build an array, I always want to make sure that I return the results. That's why you'll see me doing this several times going through this. It's just my way of doing it. The next thing we're going to do is we want a key. And so the key that we're going to use to encrypt these files is very similar in the fashion of how ransomware is going to work. We're going to simply take and create a self-signed certificate. And then what we're going to do is use that self-signed certificate through the encrypt file function down here to lock this down. So we'll go ahead and we'll create that self-signed cert. It changes every time I run the lab. So you'll see me have to copy this out of here. So we'll just go ahead and we'll copy that. It's also a little bit of fail-safe in the code if you don't know what it is that you're actually doing. So we'll go ahead and we'll change that thumbprint. We'll go ahead and throw that into our $cert, and we can see that it's returned, okay? The next thing we're going to want to do is go grab and create an array of files to encrypt. So that's what files to encrypt will do. We'll go ahead and display this. And what I'm going to do is actually just make this a little easier for our viewership here. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. There we go. All right. So now I've got an encrypt file function. I'm not going to get into that. I don't have time to get into the construct of that. I've given you the code for it. But now let's actually go do some bad things. So you want to see how fast you're going to have a very bad day, John? Right here. Now let's go back into our lovely Sysvol. Seems like a fun place to be. And what do you think is going to... Wait a minute, John. This actually looks like normal, doesn't it?
Yeah. What's the problem?
Huh, that's interesting. Maybe it didn't work. Well, how do you check for group policy updates? Let's go ahead and try a GP update /force. Let's see what happens. Oh, that doesn't look very good, does it? And actually, this particular attack, John, I have to be perfectly honest with you, was inspired by a real-life attack on a domain controller that I saw in a field. And they actually changed the gpt.ini file to having big red text that popped up in here and said that you should pay the ransom because you're having a very bad day in Active Directory right now. And so,
and I'm sorry, Dave, I just wanted to jump in. For anybody that doesn't think that these kind of attacks are a real threat, I have 3 words for you: state-sponsored malware, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on right now where, you know, nefarious governments or whatever you want to say are trying to disrupt the operations of other countries. And what better way to do that than to take down entire identity management systems for financial organizations, healthcare organizations, manufacturing organizations. You know, this is a real quick way to mess with the society.
And I'm just going to show you one more thing here, John. So I've got my local and current user here. Let's just go see where we actually put that certificate. So if we come under certificates, that doesn't look like the right one. Let's go under computer certificates here. See if we put it in here. There it is. We're going to have some real fun with this, John. I just threw away the key.
Okay.
So now, how are you going to get this back? I'm not even giving you an option to pay the ransom now. That's bad. The good news is you could actually recreate your Sysvol. So me being the bad hacker and throwing away the key, because quite literally I just threw away the key, you could actually run something like this. So we could run something called DC Gpo Fix, and this will recreate the default domain and default domain controller policy. And so this will actually rewrite those. Oh, that's not good. The restore failed. Okay, well, let's try in here. Let's see if I can delete these.
Pretty soon I'm going to have to go get my my Tums or my Rolaids. I'm getting heartburn here.
So I can't even restore that with DC GPO Fix. That's pretty bad, right? Would you say that's pretty bad, John?
I'd say that's pretty horrible.
Okay, so let's do one more thing to this just for fun, okay? So I can get into Active Directory users and computers. We've all been here a million times, right? I can right-click on objects. I can do things in here. Would you agree that this looks somewhat functional right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about the nefarious things that you could take and that you can do. Check this one out. This one's a lot of fun. So if we go to services, Microsoft was so nice to put the Active Directory Domain Services service at the top of the list. I click stop on this service, and it's going to turn off Active Directory, releasing the locks on the Active Directory database. Now, what do you think happens? And I just want to show you where Active Directory lives. So this is where Active Directory lives if you just next finish your install. It lives in C Windows NTDS. This is Active Directory. Whoops, just go ahead and close that down. Sysvol is not open right now because I have taken and I've shut that down. Whatever, goodbye. I know you're grumpy. There's Active Directory right there. These files right here, okay? And so we want to do some not nice things, right? Because we're not nice guys. We're bad guys, right? So let's go ahead and rerun this. My script is a little tricky because it actually hides that dialog box in behind the PowerShell window. I haven't had a chance to fix that yet. But C drive Windows NTDS seems like a good idea, right? Do not do this in production, please. Very bad. Very, very bad.
And if you do, please don't call us.
Now I have to create a new self-signed certificate, John, because remember I threw away the key the last time, right?
Yeah.
So if I go like this, and by the way, in my code, I don't give you this. I don't give you the code to actually decrypt anything, just further discouraging you from trying to do this. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll make sure that the $sign cert is inside of there. Cert number looked correct, 2B9. Now let's go grab our files to encrypt. I've got.
And hey, Dave, if this was a real attack, they'd be using two different private keys, so we'd actually have encrypted files with two different sets of keys, correct?
Yeah, go ahead and try to figure that out. Great, let's give that a shot. How many seconds did this attack take for me with domain admins, John?
And with talking through it, maybe a couple minutes. If you hadn't been talking through it, maybe 30 seconds.
So I don't know a lot about Active Directory, but I'm going to say error 0xC0000001 whatever is probably not good. Would you agree with that?
You had me, it could not start.
Okay, so let's go into Active Directory users and computers. Oh, wait. I can't click anywhere anymore, John. Something's going on. Huh. That's weird. Huh. Weird. Well,
I'd say this domain controller's toast.
Yeah, but John, you know what? As trained right-click jockeys, what are we trained to do in this situation if we saw this? What do you think 99% out of 100 admins would do in this exact situation right now?
Go to barber college?
Probably. Or When in doubt, reboot.
Restore.
Reboot. First thing we're going to try is a reboot, right? Okay. This seems like a logical step. Most admins would try this, right? So let's see what happens. And oh, by the way, I didn't show part of my demo in there. If I replicate Active Directory, your entire Sysvol across all your domain controllers now is in that type of shape.
Yeah, because we talked about that earlier, right? That's where everything lives so that it can be shared across a network. So if you have 20 sites across the country or across the globe, you're going to have 20 sites that are locked down and not working.
I don't know about you, John, but I'm having a bad day. So what are your options at this point in time? You could go into directory services restore mode. Hopefully you remembered the password. We could restore the system state. We can do a non-authoritative restore on this for Active Directory and try to bring it back. But in all honesty, if we're compromised at that level, it's bad news. So once again, I'm showing you this just to show you what could happen, because I want to show you why you want Azure Site Recovery or some type of recovery mechanism like that. So would you agree right now, John, that this domain controller is in pretty bad shape?
Yeah, and I'd agree that right now, as a CIO or a CSO or a CTO, I'm in high-level meetings to understand what the financial impact to my organization is really going to look like.
And guess what I'm going to go do next? I'm going to go after this guy and the next one and the next one and the next one, and eventually I'm going to completely shut down your directory service. First of all, I was an annoyance. I unlocked all your workstations. So guess what I did? I unlocked your workstations. I allowed myself to get some CNC software that was on there or malware that was on there. And now I've got access to that. But in this scenario, imagine that this was a plant and I just wanted to shut everything down. There's no more authentications. Good luck getting your PLCs to work properly now. So let's go in and let's see if we can fix this using the double swing migration. Now, John, the double swing migration does take in this lab about 20 minutes to complete. So that's why I wanted to start off at the beginning of the session with it. While that's occurring, we're starting the restoration in Azure. We're going to jump back and look at how we could have prevented all of this in the first place. This particular attack I showed you was probably the nastiest one that I could think of, because did you notice how Windows Defender didn't try to stop me? Why? Because I had domain admins. Now, the reason for that is there was no signature on anything I did. I just used raw PowerShell code, whereas a lot of the malware that's out there might have a signature that could be picked up. But I want to just point out one thing, that not all attacks show the signature, because guess what? Somebody had to be infected to start that so that they had a signature in the first place. So somebody was a victim along the lines that the antivirus didn't pick up this problem. So that attack is a very real possibility, right? The other thing is it could be a malicious attack by an internal administrator too, right? So you never know. So let's go into Azure Site Recovery. I've got DC01. I'm going to hit which button again? I'm completely having a brain fart here, John. I want to use plan failover, right?
No.
Oh yeah, that's right. I want to do a failover now. Okay, so we know bad things have happened. The other thing I want to point out is that when you're using Azure Site Recovery, I want to show you the recovery points that we can choose here. When we go to do a plan failover, currently I can go all the way back to the 6th right now, where there's a crash consistent. The only reason I can go back that far is because I turn off my lab. Typically, there's only about 24 hours worth of snapshots inside of here. See how there's a timing that it runs almost like every hour for the snapshots? Guess what happens if I fail to make a decision, John? So this is tip number 2 about a ransomware attack. You cannot wait. You cannot go for executive meetings and wait 36 hours to make a decision. You need to make decisions faster than that. So if you think that there is a ransomware attack or something is happening, you need to make sure that you lock down your vault. Now, 2 ways that can happen. I can either fail it over, or I can simply go in here, John, and if I know something bad is happening, I can say disable replication, and then I won't overrun all of my my recovery points or my RPOs that are sitting in Azure. This button here is very important, okay? So you don't have to just go fail them all over, but at least disable replication, because I don't want to keep syncing bad stuff from my environment. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Okay, so we're going to go back a little bit in time here. So what we're going to say is we'll go back to around 5 o'clock p.m. my time, and we're going to shut down the virtual machine and this would shut down the source virtual machine. Oh, wait. Huh. Failover now actually has parts of planned failover built into it. Oh, this is so stupid. Do not check this checkbox. Shut down the virtual machine and synchronize. That's the same as a planned failover. We do not want to do this. Uncheck that checkbox. You're going to sync up the bad stuff. Okay? So there's some little tricks in here to doing this, and that's why I wanted to document this with you guys in the book, is that if you're going to use Azure Site Recovery for ransomware defense, you need to be trained on this. There's some certain buttons that you click in here. If you make those mistakes, there's no going back. All right? So we're going to start the failover now. So this failover is going to take a little while. So let me just explain the mechanics of what's going to happen here, John, is that if I come back into my Site Recovery Vault, and sorry, I went one too far, so I'm just going to go back into my Recovery Vault, and we're going to come over to our Site Recovery jobs. We'll see a Site Recovery job kicking off here. So there's a failover in progress. We can actually view what's going on. See how right now this is saying start the virtual machine. It's skipping synchronization. Very important, right? So what this is doing is this is hydrating a virtual machine out of the vault for you because it doesn't pre-create the virtual machines for you. And let me just show you what happens here is when this says start the virtual machine, there will actually be a virtual machine created in here called DC01. It's kind of called DC01 replica or test inside of there. Okay, I just want to show you right now that in virtual machines, there is no virtual machine in here called DC01. So see, there's no virtual machine DC01 in here yet. And the only VM that's running is my lab here, okay? So that once this is done, there'll be a new VM in here, DC01. We'll have the ability to go in there and check things out. So we just need to let this sit here and bake for a little while. And while that's baking, what do you think? Should we show some ways to prevent this now? So not just showing the bad things that happen, but maybe showing some defenses against this?
Absolutely. I think we've got everybody's attention, so now's the time to give them the how to stop it before it starts information.
For sure, for sure. So I've got a target system that we're going to try attacking. It's called Management 01. Management 01 is a Windows Server 2019 jump box. It's a management server. I've got some tools on there and stuff like that. Now, what you can do to test for ransomware is you can download a tool from KnowBe4 Software called Ransomware Simulator, or RanSim is the name of the tool. And so right now, you'll notice on this machine that I'm pretty vulnerable, but it's 2019. This is supposed to be next generation. Why am I vulnerable, John? Why is this system looking like this right now?
I'm betting it's because you have Windows Defender turned off.
Oh, very good. You win a prize, John. So next lesson for all of you watching this video, do not turn off your antivirus. If you go onto a server and you see something like this, your server is probably not having a very fun time. So you'll notice that this thing looks a little infected, right? And so I love the RanSim tool in the lab only because it allows me to test my malware and ransomware protection. But the thing is in order to install this tool, and it is a free tool that you can get from them, you have to drop Defender. So we have to actually turn off AV in order to take and get it installed. So that's the only reason I had it off. And that's also neat because then I can show the system in kind of a failed state here. So the next thing I want to point out is Windows Defender Antivirus actually comes free of charge with Windows Server 2019. So did you know that, John, that you actually get free antivirus now with Windows Server?
No, I didn't. I thought it was still limited to the clients.
Yeah, so you actually get Windows Defender Antivirus starting actually in Windows Server 2016. And you used to have to install the System Center Endpoint Protection agent to get it, but now it's actually just baked right into Windows. And in 2019, it's actually gone a little bit next gen where we can actually have some controlled access protection. And so what this will do is this will actually protect us against ransomware. Look at that, built-in ransomware protection right into Server 2019. That is cool. Got checkbox
Nice.
to turn it on. So that's kind of neat, right? And then you can choose different protected folders and stuff like that inside of here. So now I've turned Defender back on. Should we see what happens when I click check now? See if this pops up any alerts in here?
Heck yeah.
All right, let's see just how good of a job Windows Defender does. So if this works properly, I should see a little pop-up in the system tray telling me that some pretty bad stuff is going on here. Whoa, controlled access change, starter.exe is making changes. That's probably a bad thing that's going on here. So controlled access kicked in, ransomware protection kicked in. But John, the test is still running. Oh no, a virus has been detected on the system. Let's go in here. A virus, Alchemy C, has been detected. It's scanning it. We've got a history. Bad things are happening on this machine. Now, the one thing I want to point out to you is Defender seems like it's doing its job. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, I agree with you, yes. But the problem with that I have is that Windows Defender is lacking some enterprise antivirus capabilities where we have a central management dashboard and roll-ups and alerts and all the things that we would expect to see out of an enterprise tool. This is the free version, okay? So your alerting is a little limited to the source machine. Well, are you going to go into every single one of your servers and scan the logs and make sure that everything's okay? Or would you rather pay a small fee, $15 a month, and have Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection added to your servers? It's 15 bucks a month. It comes with Azure Security Center, and there's actually a brand new URL, John, that I'd like to take you to just while this breach is happening on the system. Let's see if anything has been detected. Sometimes in my lab there's a little bit of a lag, but I have some things to show you. So once you've subscribed for the Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection portal, so it's into the Microsoft Defender Security Center. Oh, let me just go ahead and log in here. I've got some dogs barking in the background here.
Those organizations that have dozens and hundreds of servers, I mean, you'd have to employ somebody full time just to check those individual logs on individual servers. So you're absolutely right that without a single pane of glass kind of enterprise view, like we're getting into here, it would be far more expensive than that $15 a month per server.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you notice that some bad stuff's going on here. So I've got one new threat. I've got one thing in progress here happening. That latest one that I've got hasn't been uploaded back to the portal, but you can see some very suspicious activities happening here. 52 exploit guard notices, 30 antiviruses, and just look, there looks like some bad behavior going on. It says my user at risk, MMS MOA administrator. Oh my gosh, John. This looks like I've been using my administrator account, not using just enough administration or GIA to perform tasks, and maybe that's where the compromises come from. So let's just dig into this a little bit. So we can see a lot of good things in the default security operations pane. We can take a look at active incidents that are going on. So I've got a couple incidents. I can see that one is from 5/14. That looks like it's today. So we've got one here from today. We can see what's going on here, and we can see another one that happened a few days ago. I can see my list of machines that I've got. So I'm seeing some warnings in here. I got a Server 2019 machine. I can see some alerts in the queue here as well. I can see some bad things happening. And then this is a cool one under automated investigations that I'll take you to in a moment. And the other thing is how do you onboard these machines? Is you simply click on the settings wheel, come to onboarding, and we can onboard them here. And we can also integrate this with Azure as well. So with Azure Security Center. So that's kind of cool. And you can integrate this soon with Intune, I believe, as well. So that's pretty cool. So let's go back to this naughty machine and see what's going on in our alerts queue, because we did see a new alert that came in. Was it in the alerts queue or was it in the machine itself? I think it was under incidents. Yeah, so we got an incident going on. So we got this incident going on in the 14th. We can see that Defender has detected this virus. Automated investigation did not find any threats, but to see how it's starting to help us out and see what the anatomy of the attack actually looks like. So I can see the executables. I can see that, the starter and ransat file ran. I can see that, we can go through and take a look at some, different levels of investigation inside of here. And you see how right now it's taking and it's running through the investigation we've got on this particular machine. Interesting, right? So let's go take a look at another attack that happened on this machine. So we'll go into Management 01, and I hope you find this interesting just as a segue, John, while we're waiting for our Azure Site Recovery to kick in for us here. So we can find something like this piece of malware that was on that server. And what we're going to do is go into an actual live automated investigation. So after a little while, the automated investigation did kick in, and it's just going to show a little more detail. And if I take a look at the remediation actions inside of here, the remediation actions, I cleaned up 3 of the files, but I didn't clean up all of them. And one of them was actually my ransom executable that I used to install it. So this is kind of cool. So from a root cause perspective, that's pretty neat. But on the day of the attack, John, one of the problems that I found is that sometimes your management wants an investigation kit or something behind the scenes to see what's going on with this, right? Would you agree with that?
I agree wholeheartedly.
So check this out. I can actually right-click, I can click on the machine, and I can say collect investigation package, and this will download all of the machines that it's connected to, like netstats, files, all of that stuff in a nice little zip file for us. I can run an antivirus scan, I can restrict app execution, and I can isolate the machine. How powerful.
Oh, and that's perfect for audit events, right? Because if you have to comply with a financial audit or say a regulatory audit, they're going to want to see that kind of forensic data.
And you see how right now it says a package is available inside of here as well, because I created one on the 27th, so we could actually go download that and check it out. All right, so this is protecting us on the back end. I think the big piece of this is Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection for your Windows Server landscape is a must. It's $15. I think you're crazy not to run it. So you need to go out there and get that, because it will help to protect you from a lot of attacks that are out there. So let's go back over to our Azure portal, and let me go back into my resource group. And inside of my resource group, oh, it looks like we have a virtual machine now, John. So remember I told you you'd have a virtual machine? So while I was talking, it looks like we've got our DC01 running. So if we wanted to, we could try to connect to that. Now, one of the things is you won't be able to connect to this by default, John, because I didn't set up a public IP on this. So see how there's only an internal IP address in there? And so I run the screened VNet by default on purpose, because I don't want to expose this potentially to anything else in my Azure subscription. So I could add a public IP. I know it's working right now, so we're just going to assume that it is. So we'll make the assumption that this is good. This is running. We've logged in. We've checked it out. It's good. We want to take it home. So you're halfway there on the double swing. Does that make sense? And so let's go finish the double swing. So we'll go into our resource groups, and we have to get back into our recovery vault. So here's our recovery vault. And we'll go back in here. And what we'll do is we'll go over back into replicated items. And inside of our replicated items, I can come back to DC01. And now you'll notice how the buttons will have changed a little bit. Oh, first I've got to commit this first. So I've got to commit. Do not click complete migration, folks. Please do not. This actually says, I want to bring this into Azure and leave it there. So guess what? Azure Site Recovery is actually a migration tool to Azure. So if you say complete migration, what's going to happen is it'll actually turn off the synchronization and leave that VM running up in Azure. So this can actually be used as a real recovery tool for you. Or sorry, a real replication tool for you. So first thing we've got to do is just quickly commit that. So the commit will just say, yep, I want to accept the fact that that's running there. And as soon as the commit is finished, which will only take a few minutes, then we're going to take and we're going to be able to take and perform the planned failover back. So while we're waiting for that, John, I know that you're probably pretty interested in, this type of exercise, but you can see that within 20 minutes we can potentially bring this machine back. So if I go out, it says failover completed now. See now active location says Microsoft Azure. Watch this, my planned failover button opens back up for me now, and I can say planned failover. And look at where I can bring it back to, my SME fabric, which is what was created by Windows Admin Center. I can choose minimize downtime. I could also send this potentially to a different Hyper-V host if I really had to, and I could create that VM. You don't need to click this. And I just go ahead and I say OK. So now the planned failover is happening. And so what's going to happen with this final planned failover, John, is we're taking this VM out of the vault. So we've got ourselves a vault, okay? So the machine was running in the vault. It was taken and it was turned on in Azure Site and from Azure Site Recovery over to an Azure IaaS instance. So now we've got our on-prem virtual machine over here. Now we have to synchronize these two virtual machines. And so what happens is there's an initial sync while that VM is on. So the sync number 1 runs while the VM is on. Sync number 2 runs while the VM is off. And I apologize for my writing here. I'm not using a pen. I'm actually just drawing with the mouse. And so this can take a little bit of time to complete, to actually go back on-prem. I find the first synchronization will typically take about 5 minutes. The second one will take about 10 minutes. And then you're back in business, because that virtual machine will actually turn back on inside of your source environment. So within, I would say, an hour of this happening, I could actually get you back in business. So now we're in a bit of a waiting game here, because once again, after that completes, we've got to wait for some jobs. So if I come to my site recovery jobs, I can see a planned failover in progress. You can see the steps that are going in here. So it'll say initiating data synchronization, waiting for user information, user input, and then taking and starting the failback here. So it says starting the machine failback. And if I go over to our lab environment here, and I go back to Hyper-V, then if I right click on this domain controller that's off, I can click on replication here. And you see what it says reverse replication, failback replication occurring right now. Do you see that status message? And if I say view replication health, if I say view replication health, it should show me something. There we go. So view replication health. See, it says replication health, failback in progress. And so this needs to complete now. And once that completes, this virtual machine will be back on. So what we're going to do now, John, is I'm just going to actually pause our session here for a moment, and we'll come back as soon as this is complete. Sound good?
Great.
All right, so we're back. We can see that the fallback replication is nearly done. If we go back to our Azure portal here, so inside of our Azure portal, we're going to see the status for this is proceeding. So the initial data synchronization was here. That was data sync 1. This is data sync 2. And now it's just going through the process of preparing for final failback in here. If we come over to our virtual machines, you'll notice how DCL1 is now off, John. So what this means for us is this is basically in kind of a pending state. And remember when we brought the virtual machine up from on-prem and we turned it on in Azure, we didn't do a sync. We didn't do that final, that's two-stage synchronization as a planned failover. This one we do. So this VM will actually live here until we complete the migration back to on-prem. And then when we do that, it'll actually go clean up the artifacts from this particular virtual machine. And so Azure Site Recovery is an extremely powerful, I'm not going to say super easy to use out of the gate, but it's pretty easy to use with Windows Admin Center, because with just a few clicks, I had set this up. And once again, all of that was documented where, John? I forget.
In the book.
Exactly. So we'll come into our failback in progress here. So we'll go back to our status. You'll want to expand this down here. Still says failback in progress. So you can see the general time. We started the planned failover about 6:40. It's about 6:58. So we're at about 18 minutes so far. So what we'll do is we'll just pause the video again here, and we'll come back once this is fully complete.
Look at that, running.
All right, looks like we're back in business here, John. Our VM's turning back on. Let's go ahead and come back in here. Remember, this was at a looping blue screen before. So here's our moment of truth. Hopefully we chose the right restore point. Did we do it correctly for the prize? Oof. You can do it.
Suspense is
One,
palpable.
turn on. Oh, Dave Likey, you have just survived a ransomware attack using Azure Site Recovery. But wait. If you act now, there is more, because this really isn't a true test unless what? Unless when we bring this thing back online, we did this with a domain controller. It's not really a good test unless we can actually log into this thing. So let's see what happens. So
I have confidence.
hopefully it brought the IP settings back properly for us. Let's go back to the Azure portal while we're waiting, because we love waiting so much. Oh, there, it's actually ready to go. All right, so go ahead and log in. And as you notice, I can actually talk and type, so that's a unique skill for a presenter.
I put you in the 1% club.
Okay, so let's go ahead and what were some of the things we want to check here? Let's go ahead and maybe check our Sysvol, because I think we roasted our Sysvol pretty good, right?
Yeah, I'd say.
Let's go check our Sysvol. And inside of our Sysvol, that looks a lot better, doesn't it? That would not be what I would call encrypted. Let's check Active Directory replication. Active Directory replication looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and check Active Directory users and computers. And remember last time, this wasn't very happy, was it? So we could open Active Directory users and computers. I think I can. I think it's just warming up. Click in here. I can actually click around. I can do some things. And with that, John, I think we're probably going to end the session right there. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for helping my organization, MMS, survive a ransomware attack. What's some advice, final advice you have for our listeners that are out there today?
Dave, before I get to that, let me say thanks again for including me in this session. This is so relevant and so powerful. And that's the advice that I have to give. My final words to put out there are, if you're waiting, if you haven't looked into this, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting to be caught by a ransomware attack and have to answer those tough questions? Or would you rather get ahead of the game and be able to say, hey, I got this, I can recover? Because I think that's where you want to be.
Absolutely. And the tools are there. Azure's a fantastic medium. Check it out if you haven't checked it out today. Get yourself a free trial. Start learning. Cloud's your friend, everyone. Enjoy the rest of MVP days. We really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
See you later, everyone.